Hello, everybody, and welcome back. Welcome back. 10.11 is coming, and we are here with Jean to talk about the changes, and there's a couple of changes and cool changes and lots of stuff going on. I don't know why I'm talking so fast and why the energy is here, but it is here, and I'm excited. Jean, how are you doing, my friend?
Doing well. Glad to see there's so much energy in.
It's also 10.11, and it just feels good when you have a big number and then the number that follows it being, because it was 10.1, 10.2, 10.3, blah, 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 blah. And that's 10.11 and it's going to be 10.12. And yeah, it's cool stuff. And we're after a content drop and we're going to a content drop that is going to happen in December. And we're kind of in between, and the journeys are making a comeback and there are balance changes. There's just a lot going on. And I like when there's a lot going on.
Yeah. So a lot going on, but not all that much going on in 10.11 because as we had a content drop just in 10.10, we're mostly been focused on doing balancing on that content drop. So in particular, the top factions, Northern Realm and Nilfgaard, have been adjusted, as a lot of people were hoping for.
Nice.
But also there's been a focus on mid-range leader abilities, and we'll talk about it as we go through some of these changes.
Okay, sounds good. Do you want to start off with neutrals? That's the question.
Yeah, neutral is always a good start, right?
Okay, so let's jump straight into it and let's see what the neutral changes are. So we have Geralt Irden and Geralt Igni, changes to cards which have been very influential on the meta and kind of since last open we've seen them everywhere. So the limits were adjusted for Igni, and some changes for Irden. So what's going on here?
Yeah, so with 10.10 we've seen a resurgence of Geralt Ilden and Geralt Igni. These cards have found their spot in about 15% of the decks in pro rank, something like this. So it's the situation of this card is ambivalent because in one hand they do offer answers against specific decks, right? So against specific metas. The problem we have with it is that the form these answers take usually do not leave room for counterplay. That's not something we enjoy very much, right? They end up being very game defining. The other thing is that what we've noticed is that a big amount of the users were actually, for instance, Nilfgaard Knights, which were using it to kind of abuse the situation they had generated themselves. So it wasn't so much an answer than just something making something stronger. So the adjustment we did taking Igni is not as much of a problem. There's more counterplay around it, but we did found that its conditions, minimum power conditions, were a bit low by nowadays standards. Which is why we raised both by 5. In the case of Irden, it's harder to open it up.
The whole
what
thing.
We did is that we ended up adding this adrenaline effect on it, which at the very least is going to prevent it from being played as last say. Right, I think you're going to have to drop it as the third card from your hand, the fourth card. I'm bad at math. Anyway, it's not true. Whatever. This is how it works.
Moving on. But interesting that you mentioned this. I feel like I totally agree with what you said, that looking into current version of Gwent, when it comes to the power level of cards or the amount of points that cards are able to generate, it feels like Igni kind of was still stuck in the older version of Gwent, where actually the power levels were a little bit lower. I know that people might think now the game is more swingy in terms of points, but I feel like if the tools that counteract those things are kind of kept on a similar level, that will just increase the gameplay for it. And like you said, with Igni, you always need to kind of think when you're actually wanting to play the card, while with Irden, I mean, there's really no restriction almost, which feels like, everything that you set up throughout the whole game, it's just one card is played and everything is reset on a row, and you're like, well, there goes my game plan, right? And I feel like that is frustrating for players. Cool. So we have the neutral changes. moving on up, we are heading into monsters, and we're gonna look at Tirnalia, which is one of the new cards, which was recently added to the game.
And I guess first of all, what I want to talk about is that monsters actually in a state where the results they are achieving on the ladder does not necessarily match the way they're perceived by the community, because the community tends to think that monster is not all that great. What we're seeing is that they are actually performing quite solidly. I mean, they're not like the best out there, but
they're doing very well.
Solid Wildland deck, a solid Vampire Renfrey deck too, and we're even seeing decent results with Death Wishes. So we didn't want to bring too much changes to them. The one thing we did is, so with Tirnalia, we're following 10.10, we had to hotfix Tirnalia to prevent it being reused with Dream Vendra. And on this occasion, we entirely locked the order behind Devotion, because that was the fast solution for us in terms of not requiring too much changes localization-wise, because that's a limit that we have to work around. But a lot of players were requesting that at the very least, the Red Riders part of the effect would not be locked under Devotion. And we agree with this. So we made this change for 10.11.
Nice. And that's one of the things that we wanted to highlight. Are there any other changes that are going to be happening for monsters when it comes to patch notes and things like that?
For 10.11?
Yes.
No, that's the only one.
Okay, cool. Perfect. Just wanted to get that out of the way, because for this one, in terms of the changes that we're discussing here, we'll be discussing some of them, but I think there's also like things in terms of like bug fixes and also some minor fixes that we're not going to cover here.
Yeah, the usual.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention that just because we always try to have that there. Okay, so that's monsters, and we're moving on to Northern Realms, and there's a couple changes here, and here we go. Starting with Reaver Scouts, Reaver Hunters, and Kenneth and Gar.
Yeah, so the Reaver Bronzes, they're very quickly designated as like public enemy number one to the last match.
True.
We saw a lot of players actually include Surrender in their decks as a mean to counter.
It was interesting to see that card make a resurgence.
So the funny thing is that because they were so designated as public enemy number one, it actually kind of limited their impact on the ladder. Where, in terms of oppressive decks that we've seen before, they didn't necessarily match in terms of numbers. But this is a direct impact of the way they were perceived. So nonetheless, they are definitely defining, and that's why the Reaver Scout and Hunters are getting this +1 provision. On the other hand, Kenneth and Gar definitely showed disappointing results, which to be fair, we kind of expected when we shipped 10.10. Ultimately, the card is a utility one, and it should be priced as such, which is why we've lowered its provision to the 7 range, which is kind of like this range of utility stuff.
So it's going down from 9 to 7, which is bigger than the 1 point changes. We're going here down by 2. We're going down by 2, which hopefully makes the card see a little bit more play. Okay, that's NR. Moving on to Nilfgaard, we have a couple things to talk about here, and we'll be starting with spotters, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
So spotter, order Luzo armor. That's new, right? And also a change to provision going from 5 to 6. And it's gonna be an interesting one.
Yeah. So after it was Nausicaa Surgeon that was used a lot, things moved to Spotter. That proved to be very reliable in the value it brings, but also synergizes with cards like Vilgefortz, right? Because it ends up bringing this information about the way your opponent decks is laid out. And not only that, but also the fact that it was like keeping its armor meant that it would keep generating passively points, like tanking random pings and whatnot. So in light of all of this, the very least you could do was make sure that this armor would go away, because the number were kind of ridiculous. But also price it higher to better reflect not only strength that the card is bringing, but also the the information and synergy that comes with it.
Yeah, perfect. So that's Spotter for you. And moving on, we have a change to Imprisonment Nilfgaard.
Yes, so that's the first of the mid-range leaders that we are targeting. There's two other. So in the case of Imprisonment, it offers amazing control potential, right?
Yeah.
And in fact, it's been paired a lot with Renfrey, where that means you can just like use everything in round 1 and then you drop Renfrey and you have a new leader, right? This answer to Imprisonment is not perfect, right? Like, it doesn't change the fact that it's a very good leader ability that brings control and range. So maybe in the future we'll have to come back to it.
Yeah.
But for now, at the very least, it should be more expensive, which is why it's going to 14 provision.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, also recently we just saw, like you mentioned, a resurgence of more Imprisonment decks, and especially the ones running Renfrey.
And the one last thing is that this Imprisonment deck was obviously running Spotter. So along the Spotter nerf, this is actually a free provision point nerf. Yeah. Right.
Yeah. Exactly. Well said. So that's Imprisonment for you. And moving on, we have Milton, the pay-ran. So now you boost enemy unit by 3 and boost self by 3. So a change here.
Yep. So that's another change targeted at that mid-range NG deck.
Yeah.
Because the thing is, we're mostly happy with the state of NG Knights. And in fact, in the first place, they're already being hit by the nerf we're doing to Geralts, right? But Milton has been seeing some mid-range uses where you would just drop the card and then you would use another one to mitigate this boost that you had given to the enemy. Then you would click Milton order on itself, and that would just bring you like 14 points, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So this nerf on the boost shouldn't impact the knights too much, but when it comes to the mid-range decks, it does make them lose 2 points. So yeah.
Nice. Perfectly said. And we are still on the Nilfgaard train when it comes to changes. We have 2 more changes here, if I'm not mistaken. We have Trahern and then Albo Pikeman.
Yep. So Trahern, we have adjusted the stats, raising the power by 2, but also raising the provisions by 2. The idea is that we are actually fine with the existence of Trahern's effect. But the potential it has is not okay on such a low provision card. And as such, we think it should represent a bigger investment if you actually want to run it in your deck. That being said, the fact that it was such a low tempo card was a weakness of the card.
Yeah.
And obviously, if we're raising a bit its power, it's not as low of a tempo. So we'll see how they color that.
Yeah. Nice. Yeah, it makes total sense here. Okay.
And when it comes to Alba Pikeman, the card was actually very strong in all playtests when we were working on the NG Soldier rework. But it didn't ended up really finding its spot on the ladder. So with this buff, what we're hoping to do is give a bit more interest in flanking cards in general, and even potentially some help to the NG status deck.
Nice. Yeah. Cool stuff all around. But yeah, like you mentioned, Nilfgaard is getting some significant changes here. And moving on, we have Syndicate, if I'm not mistaken. And we have Siggy making a comeback. So Siggy Reuven Mastermind. Yeah. And look at a collusion and a random unit from each gang from your deck. So the change over here.
So as everyone is probably painfully aware, it took us some time to get the card to properly work on the ladder.
Yes.
But when it finally did, people realized that Siggy Mastermind was a very versatile tutor. And most importantly, that it created this incredible combo with Tunnel Drill, where you could very easily pull Tunnel Drill and just play a special in the same turn.
Yeah.
So for this strength, the first thing we're doing is that we're raising the provisions by 1. But the second thing we're doing is we're restricting what Sig is able to pull from any card to only units.
Yeah.
Aside from collusion, obviously.
Yeah.
So the combo is still doable, right? You can still play Shitty Vendor, you can still play collusion, but it is less flexible than what it used to be.
Yeah.
And we'll monitor how the deck is evolving as a result.
Nice. And that's that. If I'm not mistaken, that's the only Syndicate change here.
It's the only one, yeah.
Yeah. So we're moving on to Scoia'tael, and there's actually a couple things that we will have here to highlight. So let's jump straight into that. We have Guerrilla Tactics and Milva Sharpshooter changes. While Milva is actually getting a boost.
Yeah, but you'll see, she took a hit. So Guerrilla Tactics is this second mid-range lead ability that we're targeting.
Yeah.
Well, paired with Milva, it had this ability to delete full power targets, and it re-cemented it as this mid-range control ability, which wasn't at all what we wanted for the leader. But to a degree, this problem actually existed before.
Yeah.
Because even before the existence of Milva, the fact that they were, both options were on the same value, meant you had more incentive to use the control version in the first place. Because, damage and the ability to move the card to potentially disrupt an effect. This in general will bring you more value than actually using it on your own unit. So the goal to this change is, first of all, reduce the reach of the leader because we think this reach is too oppressive. And second, refocus Guerrilla Tactics on the movement synergy by making this big incentive to use charges on your own unit. But obviously this is a big hit to Milva Sharpshooter. Yeah. And but nonetheless, we do think that the card can still exist, coexist along movement-oriented decks. If you play like Malena or cards like this. So what we've done is that we've increased its power by 1, so that even if you only pull her out of the deck a limited amount of time, as long as you keep her on the board, she ends up being just like a kind of roach, right? Where the value comes from the fact that you're not playing her, like she's being thinned out.
Perfect. So that's Milva for you. And moving on, we have some other changes, being Naiad Pawnkeeper, Dryad Enchantress, Frog Mating Season, and Shaping Nature. Well, we're seeing buffs here all around.
Yeah, a lot of buffs.
Yeah.
So, in general, the Symbiosis deck has not been terrible, but it has been struggling,
Yeah.
And all of these changes, so a bunch of them, first of all, they aim at giving a bit more choice in the 4 provision range. So this is why Pawnkeeper is going from 5 to 4. But also, we've made this change to Enchantress, where she is gaining Symbiosis to make her appealing in this 4 provision range, right? The reason we've also kind of changed her power and gave her vitality is because we didn't want her to have too much power, otherwise it was too easy to want to include her.
Yeah.
At the same time, we thought it was interesting to raise the vitality value so that you would have a neat high vitality giver, for instance, for your Frexenet.
Yeah.
We've done this small buff to Frog Mating Season, decreasing the provisions by 1. And when it comes to Shaping Nature, what we've done is that we've increased all of the values by 1, right? So the boost is increased to 7, the other boost is increased to 9, and then boost by 6 and vitality to 6.
Nice.
And in general, trying to make the card a bit more appealing.
Nice. Yes, I hope that all the Symbiosis enjoyers will reunite and will be happy with these changes because, I feel like it needed a little bit of a boost, and I'm really, really happy that this is coming for us Scoia'tael enjoyers. Moving on, Skellige, starting off with Reckless Flurry. So we're seeing a change here in terms of the damage, which is going up, and the charges are kind of going down by 1.
Yes. So this is the last of our mid-range leader ability changes. Reckless Fury has been this flagship leader ability, literally creating this Skellige mid-range control decks ever since we've made that change to it. And so this changes we're introducing does reduce the total damage by 1, right? And reduces the flexibility of the card since we're removing a charge. There is one benefit though, that does actually increase the reach whenever you use a charge. In situations where you are missing one ping, that would have been a bit awkward before, and now you might feel a bit better about it. But let's be honest, this is a nerf and it's intended to be a nerf.
Yeah. Simple as that.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's Reckless Flurry for you, and now moving on to Sova. There we go. One of my favorite arts from the past card drop, for sure.
And so with Sova, as we were talking of mid-range, Sova definitely found its spot in there.
Oh yeah.
Because it was like this proactive, uninteractable play. It works super well with Reckless Flurry, right? Because then you would get even more value out of it, like from having random units be damaged through the armor. It was incredibly non-committal because you could drop Sov and decide whenever you wanted or not to summon the beast. And even if you were summoning it, you had this option to just kill it on the same turn. All of this was not what we wanted for Sov. What we wanted for Sov was a card that would be a payoff for Bloodthirst-centric strategies.
Yeah.
So the changes we've introduced is moving from order to a deploy ability. That is roll locked, so that you actually do have the option to not summon if that would be a problem for you. The immunity is now conditional on actually summoning a beast. You do not get the immunity otherwise. We have raised the power of Sov by 1 to compensate a bit the nerf, but basically we'll monitor how Sov is doing and make sure that he doesn't crash too hard and actually fill the spot of being this high-hand Bloodthirst reward that we wanted it to be.
Yeah, we'll see how he'll perform after this change, but I think it's also one of those cards that players enjoyed a lot. So we'll see how the impact on this change will go through. Okay, moving on. We have one last thing for Skellige, which is actually buffs for Patricidal Fury, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep, to help Sov.
So there's some changes here, and I think some flexibility changes.
Yeah, exactly. So Patricidal Fury, you used to be this single charge thing. You get Arniolf, you get 3 Sirens. That's 3 Bloodthirst triggers. What we've done is we've decorrelated the Siren spawns from Arniolf partially. So now you have 3 charges. Each one summons the Siren that then gets damaged to your open board, giving him 1 point, basically. And on the last charge, you get to play Arniolf, which also still spawn 1 more Siren. So the number of Sirens has been bumped from 3 to 4. Arniolf power has been adjusted to compensate for it. But more importantly, you're gaining so much flexibility, right?
Yeah.
Because now, if you're in round 1 and you're missing 1 Bloodthirst to your triggers, you can just pop a shard, right?
Yeah.
And even better, that means that later down the line, when you actually use Arniolf, this is 1 less Siren that you have to give to your opponent, right? So this buff to Patricidal Fury, the AD is to help out Bloodthirst by giving them a bit more of that flexibility and allow them to be a bit less stuck. Which is also one of the reasons that Reckless Fury was probably an interesting choice for them prior, because Reckless Fury was bringing part of that flexibility, right? Yeah. You could just pop a charge and try to get that missing Bloodthirst.
Yeah, perfect. So Patricidal Fury, Arnie of the Patricide changes here. Looking like changes for the best, like you said. Really like the flexibility when it comes to using these two. So excited about that. Before we get to the seasonals, I wanted to also talk about something which is going to happen with this update, which is something that we're adding to the reward book, and I'm actually going to show it right now. We're adding something called resource exchange, so you can be able to trade reward points for meteorite powder or scraps or ultimate kegs, and this is how it will look like in the game itself. So you will be able to exchange one of your reward points for 10 resources or 25 when it comes to the ore, or when it comes to card scraps 30, or one for 4 for 1 keg. So that's pretty much how it's going to look like. This is kind of something that players were asking for in terms of like how I can exchange some of the RP points which I have, so you'll be able to adjust them and change them and kind of move them on to the resources that you need in terms of crafting stuff or buying stuff. So as requested, they are here. I think the meteorite powder one will be quite popular. Same goes for the scraps, because I feel like getting new cards and making them premiumified is kind of the thing that players are looking forward to. So yeah, I just wanted to add that there.
To be clear, the title that's on the left is wrong. It is like you're not exchanging resources for reward points. You are exchanging reward points for resources.
Exactly.
And this is a mechanic that's mostly intended for people that have already completed all of their reward books.
Exactly. If you complete your reward books and you have too much points, use them wisely for other resources. So yeah, thank you for that correction, Jean.
Always good to help out.
And moving on to the last thing that we want to talk about in this video, which is the seasonals that we'll be expecting coming in with 10.11. So what can we expect as players?
Yeah, so one new seasonal in 10.11, and it's called Our Battle Will Be Legendary.
Nice.
And basically, upon a Terra match, your entire deck is replaced, thrown away, and replaced by all of the legendaries from your faction.
Nice.
Which gives you this completely dysfunctional but luxurious 40 cards deck that you can play with.
Damn, that's really cool. That's really cool. That's crazy. But that's all of them, like all the legendaries. So yeah, that's why it's 40 cards. Oh my god, faction. That's gonna be crazy. I think that there'll be some weird, some weird synergies there.
And one more thing, Billy Balance is making a comeback in 10.11.
Nice.
And we've done a very slight tweak to it, where your stratagem will now be replaced by a free power bear.
Okay.
Basically, what we ended up seeing, I mean, players had spotted it out, but it was even more apparent through our data that there was a bias toward going first, because it turned out that 5 points was definitely too much of a counterbalance to going second. So we'll try with 3 and we'll see how that is.
Perfect. Cool stuff all around. Lots of interesting changes. Can't wait to see how this will influence the game. If you're watching this on a Monday, the patch will be coming out on Tuesday, and the patch notes will be coming on along with this. So check those out also. PlayGwent.com news section as always. And I think that's it from us, John, right?
Yeah.
Perfect.
I went through everything.
Thank you for taking the time as always. Thank you for preparing everything. I always enjoy having a nice scripted developer video stream that you kind of prepare. So thank you for that. And yeah, we'll probably see one another once again, apart from seeing each other in the office. We'll see each other for the next one, which will be also introducing some new cards. So can't wait for that one. Yeah, it's going to be exciting. I can't wait for it. And plus, we also have Gwent World Masters. So I think these things will tie nicely together. Awesome. Jean, thank you as always. Thank you, everybody, for watching, and see you later.
See you, Burza. See you, everyone.
Bye-bye.